At tonight's lake house party, Kara's mom reminds her that she'll be visiting her dad earlier than usual this weekend. Something Deborah is reluctant to hear. Jess then asks Kara to water the plants while she gets ready, unaware of a black muscle car that passes by while Kara is outside. The same car pulls up and Richard Ivanitz approaches her. He distracts her by pretending to be a magazine salesman before pulling out a gun, petrifying Kara. He commands her to keep silent and climb into a large storage bin in the back seat of his car as they drive away. Kara fights off a panic attack. Soon Jess is ready to leave but can't find Kara. She heads out and finds the garden hose discarded, so she yells out for her friend Worley. Meanwhile, the car stops at a deserted area and Richard informs Kara that she'll be gagged and restrained. Emphasizing that he's armed, Kara acknowledges and he goes to fetch the restraints. Kara's heart is pounding as she searches for an escape route. She imagines making a run for it but fears getting shot, so she decides to wait. Richard returns and binds her before closing the container and continuing the journey. Meanwhile, Jess calls Deborah's office hoping that she picked up Kara. Unannounced, Deborah denies this and becomes worried about her daughter's sudden disappearance. She calls Kara's boyfriend Ryan asking if they are together and he responds that she should be with Jess, but Deborah replies that Kara is not there. With that, the mother calls the police before going to Jess's house. The abductor's car comes to a halt and the man brings the container inside a house. He warns Kara to remain quiet as he removes her restraints. Kara is escorted to a bedroom where the man reminds her that he's always armed. Richard also instructs her to obey his commands and to always ask for his permission. He warns that breaking the rules will have severe consequences. The abductor interrogates her about her life and writes the answers in a notebook. He then orders her to lie on the bed and stay quiet as he takes her innocence. Kara can only remind herself to follow the rules, wait and survive. Elsewhere, Deborah calls her ex-husband Ron to ensure that Kara isn't with him, which he confirms. Deborah then tearfully informs Ron that their daughter might have been abducted, so he rushes over. A police officer arrives outside Jess's house, so Deborah reports that Kara has been missing for 2 hours. However, the officer is convinced that Kara just ran away. She strongly denies this, citing how her daughter is responsible. Before leaving, the officer advises her to wait in case Kara calls at Richard's house. Kara focuses on gathering information while waiting for a chance to escape. She engages Richard in small talk and learns that he used to be in the Navy. The abductor reassures her that she won't be hurt if she behaves and even promises to let her go eventually. The man caresses her before walking away. Although Kara imagines making a run for it while he's out of sight, she realizes that it's too risky. Later, Richard lets Kara look at his pets, noting that he likes animals because they're simple and don't mind being caged. Sounding apologetic, he reminds Kara that he'll release her eventually but warns that her reputation will be ruined if she reports him at her house. Deborah is distraught. Jess's neighbor reported seeing a suspicious black muscle car before Kara disappeared, reinforcing her suspicions. She's now organizing a search party and reaching out to anyone she can. At Richard's house, Kara requests to use the bathroom, wondering if she can escape from there. As she is about to close the door, however, Richard appears with his gun and watches her when she tries to wash her hands. He reminds her that she hasn't asked for permission. Kara then asks for permission while the man looks at her. Later, Richard prepares dinner and Kara says she doesn't feel like eating. Her abductor reminds her of the rules, so she relents. She even offers to help, so Richard asks her to sweep the kitchen floor. As she does, Kara surveys the area, memorizing the names and numbers of calling cards on the fridge where the knives are kept and the notes on his calendar while being his obedient guest. Richard suddenly orders her to remove her clothes. At the police station, Sheriff Dale Stevens isn't taking the disappearance seriously. He promises that his best people will work on the case before politely dismissing Deborah and telling her to go home in case Kara calls. Meanwhile, Richard goes to watch the news while Kara is visibly upset about what transpired earlier. When the news doesn't mention her, he gaslights her into believing that nobody cares that she's gone. She's then led to the bedroom and told to climb inside the storage bin because he has to call someone. He gags her and closes the lid, causing her to hyperventilate, and he gets angry at the noise but shows compassion by removing the gag and not closing the container. Kara silently cries, repeating to herself that she must survive. Later, Richard covers the cages and whispers goodnight to his pets. He then takes a large box under the cages but sees Kara watching him. He suddenly hides it as her captor is brushing his teeth. She considers closing the door and escaping through the window when he leaves, but she knows she'll just get caught. Before sleeping, Richard chains Kara to the bed and whispers that he's excited for tomorrow. In the morning, Kara wakes up to Richard's snores and quickly decides that this is her best chance to escape. She works to unchain herself, then tiptoes out of the room with only escape in mind. She bolts out the front door and flags a car with two men, Hurley explaining that she was abducted. When she pleads to be taken to a police station, they let her in. As they drive off, she points to an apartment unit asking them to remember it. Having escaped, Kara enters the police station to seek justice. She approaches the front desk and reports her abduction as Lieutenant Aaron Rowland takes Kara to his office for a detailed statement while calling for another inspector to retrieve the missing persons report and join them. He also orders for her rescuers to be interviewed. Sergeant Bonnie Jennings interviews Kara's rescuers, however they don't remember the exact apartment where she came from as things happen too fast. Kara recounts the events of her escape as Bonnie enters the room to hand the missing persons report that Deborah filled. Deborah soon receives a call from Aaron and learns that her daughter has been found. He hands the phone to Kara to let the two have a tearful exchange. Bonnie then asks if Kara can identify the apartment where she was held since her rescuers couldn't remember which unit it was. Kara is reluctant, but Aaron requests for her to try. Her desire for justice allows her to gather the courage to return to Richard's apartment. They arrive at the apartment complex, but the units look identical. The officers see a maintenance man and describes to him Kara's attacker. Kara joins them and starts giving additional details as she enumerates her abductor's pets. The maintenance man deduces that it's apartment 301. Bonnie is shown the unit while Aaron escorts Kara back to the car. Commanding her sharp memory, Deborah arrives at the police station just as Kara returns from the apartment complex and they share a tearful reunion. Later at Unit 301, after getting no answer from inside, Bonnie uses the maintenance man's key to open the door. She, Aaron and Sheriff Jim Price sweep the unit but find no one there. Kara and her mom are at a hospital when Bonnie arrives with a set of pictures. Kara identifies Richard, who is then confirmed to be leasing apartment 301, however he has already escaped, though Bonnie reassures them that he'll soon be apprehended. Bonnie asks Kara for any additional information that could aid in locating Richard, so she begins to recite all the information she has gathered about him. She also points out the large box under the bird cages. Bonnie then informs Kara that she'll undergo a physical examination for evidence collection at the crime scene. Aaron reports that they couldn't find registration for a black muscle car under Richard's name. Inside the box, Kara mentioned they discover evidence of Richard's past crimes, newspaper clippings and a notebook. Jim orders the officers to gather information about the cases referenced in the clippings while Aaron is tasked with analyzing the notebook's contents. Soon Jim reveals to Dale that the news clippings were regarding the cold cases of Sophia, Sylvia and the List sisters, who were also abduction victims. Richard's motives was to keep his victims for days before drowning them and dumping their bodies in a swamp. The notebook contained potential targets and their routines, but Kara wasn't included. Jim though that the actual target deviated from her routine on the day of Kara's abduction, so Richard was forced to take someone else. Bonnie arrives and informs both sheriffs that Richard's wife, mother and sister have agreed to cooperate tomorrow. The mother has also permitted them to search her house. After finishing her examination, Kara has an emotional reunion with Jess, Ryan and Ron. She reassures Jess that what happened wasn't her fault. After noticing people whispering about her, Kara announces her desire to go home. Bonnie and Jim are at the home of Richard's mother. They find the black muscle car they believe Richard used to own before switching to another vehicle. Upon Bonnie's visit to the Johnson residence, Kara expresses her frustration over the presence of many officers. Bonnie explains that it's for her safety and support given that her abductor hasn't been arrested yet. Kara dislikes this but accepts it nonetheless. She goes to rest and jokingly hopes Richard gets caught while she is asleep. Bonnie responds that it will definitely happen soon. The next morning, Kara tells her mother that she plans to visit Ryan, and Deborah firmly objects, insisting that she shouldn't leave until Richard is caught. However, Kara asserts that she won't alter her life because of her tragedy. The two argue until Jess arrives. Kara dismisses their conversation and happily invites Jess to her room. There, Kara acts as if nothing happened, making Jess unsure about how to behave. Kara encourages her friend to ask whatever she wants to know, but Jess maintains that she only wants to ensure she is alright. Kara reassures her that she's okay and insists that her friend asks what she wants. Jess hesitantly asks what happened and Kara starts to describe her ordeal. Meanwhile, Aaron questions Richard's wife Ashley at the station and she reveals that she was away over the weekend but insists that Richard would never do the things he is accused of. She claims to have no idea where he is or to have had any contact with him. Stephanie Newell, Richard's sister, arrives. Later on, she greets their mother Maggie Ivanitz and her sister-in-law in the lobby, but Ashley gets more distressed. Upon seeing her, Stephanie's interrogation uncovers that Richard would drive Ashley's car with a swap license plate and he's likely to contact them to reunite with his wife. She also suspects that this isn't Richard's first time abducting women, causing Aaron to sympathize with her. Stephanie then confesses that Richard contacted her yesterday afternoon, apologizing for not admitting it sooner. Aaron later rushes into Jim's office and hands over information about the motel where Richard is staying, which Stephanie arranged. Jim believes that Richard is still there since it's not time for checkout, so Bonnie is immediately dispatched to the motel. Meanwhile, Kara sees Jess off before her friend goes. Kara asks if they will still watch Ryan's baseball game. Later Jess is taken back but says yes as Jess leaves. Dale arrives and asks how Kara is doing. He calls her a victim and insists that she stay home until Richard is caught. However, Kara responds that the police should put more effort into capturing Richard since they did nothing when she was abducted. Surprised and offended by the lady's behavior, Dale reveals that Richard was actually planning to take her life since he has likely done this to 3 other women. This comes as a shock to Kara, who believed that Richard was going to release her. The sheriff adds that Kara was lucky she wasn't the next victim, but she responds that luck had nothing to do with her escape. Soon Bonnie responds that Richard had already left the motel, but in his hurry he left Kara's shirt from when he took her. Aaron suspects a family member warned him, though Jim is optimistic that Richard is too busy escaping instead of plotting against Kara or another woman. The sheriff then informs Aaron that the evidence found at the apartment matches those in the Sylvia Endless cases. Aaron is astonished that the cold cases might get resolved all because of Kara. At the Johnson residence, Jim introduces himself to Kara as the Richland County Sheriff. She assumes that he also wants her to stay at home where it's safe, but he responds that Kara is strong enough to defend herself, which surprises her. He offers to answer any questions, so Kara asks if Richard is responsible for what happened to Sylvia and the Lisk sisters. Jim says they're still waiting for evidence to confirm it, but the contents of the box that Kara had pointed out suggests yes. So Kara asks if Richard would have ended her life. Jim admits that they'll never know because she didn't allow him to get that chance. Kara is taken aback by this realization. Jim then thanks her for everything she's done, calling her a survivor, not a victim. This shift in perspective empowers Kara and helps her see things in a different light. On the way out of Kara's house, he receives a call from Aaron. He's told that Richard used his cell phone 15 minutes ago in Jacksonville, Florida, and they suspect he's heading to his other sister in Bradenton. Jim advises Aaron to make sure the police there are informed after Aaron hangs up. Bonnie reports that the family has no further information. They reach out to Richard's sister in Bradenton, Pamela, who reveals that Richard called her to meet outside his favorite restaurant. Bonnie then contacts the Bradenton Police Department to inform them that Richard may be en route at the Johnson residence. Kara locks to Jess's car while Deborah pleads with her not to leave. Kara ignores this, determined to put her abduction behind her. Deborah insists that she should take some time to recover, but Kara is adamant about getting her life back to normal, refusing to let what happened take it away from her. She apologizes to her mother, then leaves with Jess. At the baseball game, Kara goes to wish Ryan good luck before she goes to her seat elsewhere. Bradenton officer spots Richard, causing him to flee as one officer chases him on foot. His partner stays inside the vehicle and radios in their location before joining the chase by car. The officers eventually corner Richard and he desperately looks for a way to escape. At the game, the sound of Ryan hitting a home run coincides with the sound of the gunshot as Richard takes his own life. Kara and the audience cheer on Ryan's performance just as the nightmare finally ends. The following day, Kara wakes up and still feels uneasy but puts on a smile anyway. As she starts her day, she finds her mother making pancakes, which she remarks is unusual. Deborah then tells her that Richard passed away last night and officers are coming over shortly. Kara is furious that no one told her immediately, but Deborah counters that she didn't want to ruin their celebration about the baseball game. Still, Kara retreats to be alone. Soon Jim arrives to see Kara sitting outside. He sits beside her and surmises that her anger is rooted in something deeper. Kara releases her pent-up anger toward Richard, confessing that her desire for justice kept her going after the abduction. She wished she could have told Richard that abducting her was a grave mistake. In a moment of clarity, Kara realizes there's no more trial, so she doesn't have to share the details of her abduction, sparing her loved ones from the painful details. Jim admires that after everything she went through, she's still thinking about protecting her loved ones. He calls her a hero and he's certain that Richard was aware that taking Kara was his downfall. Inside the house, Bonnie advises Deborah to give Kara time to cope with her emotions. The officer leaves as Kara enters the room. She expresses her desire to have her freedom back as she refuses to let what happened to her shackle her. Deborah apologizes for being controlling and explains that she doesn't know what to do in this situation. Kara tells her that while her mother can't undo the tragedy, it doesn't change who she is and that she is a survivor.